The restaurant manager fired her on the spot for giving free soup to an old homeless man sitting outside in the rain. But what the manager didn't know was that the homeless man was Medal of Honor recipient Master Sergeant James Riley, and his former Marines were about to teach everyone a lesson about respect that would echo through the entire town. Chen had been working at Romano's family restaurant for 3 years, and she'd never broken a rule, not once. But on that cold Tuesday evening in November, she looked out the window at the old man shivering on the bench, and something inside her couldn't stay silent. Welcome, Mysterious Human Stories. Before we continue this powerful tale of courage, consequences, and the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood, tell me in the comments, from which city around the world are you watching today? And if you believe some acts of kindness are worth any consequence, hit that subscribe button. This story will restore your faith in humanity. Romano's family restaurant sat on the corner of Oak Street and Veterans Boulevard in the small town of Millfield, just 20 minutes from Camp Lejeune. It was the kind of place that served comfort food to comfort people. Meatloaf on Mondays, fish fry Fridays, and apple pie that tasted like someone's grandmother made it. Derek was the kind of manager who counted every French fry and watched every customer like they might steal the salt shakers. He ran Romano's like his personal kingdom, where rules weren't guidelines, they were law. The restaurant had a strict policy: no free food, no exceptions, no matter who asked, no matter the circumstances. Derek had fired 3 employees in 2 years for unauthorized charity, as he called it. That Tuesday started like any other. The dinner rush was winding down, a few regulars lingered over coffee, and Sarah was wiping down tables when she noticed him through the window. An old man sat on the bus stop bench outside, hunched against the November rain. He wore a faded military jacket that had seen better decades, combat boots with holes in the soles, and a wool cap that couldn't quite hide his gray hair. He'd been there for over an hour, just sitting, watching the rain fall. Sarah had seen him before. He came by every few weeks, never causing trouble, never asking for anything. Sometimes he'd sit on that bench for hours, like he was waiting for a bus that never came. Tonight was different. Tonight the temperature was dropping, the rain was getting heavier, and the old man was shivering. Sarah finished cleaning her section and walked to the kitchen. The soup of the day was chicken and vegetables, hearty, warm, the kind of meal that could chase away the cold. She ladled a bowlful, grabbed some crackers and a coffee, and headed for the door. "Where are you going with that?" Derek's voice cut through the restaurant like a blade. Sarah paused, her hand on the door handle. "There's an old veteran outside in the rain. He looks cold and hungry." Derek stepped closer, his voice lowering to the tone he used when he was about to make an example of someone. "Put it back." "Derek, it's just soup. We throw away gallons of it every night. The rule is no free food, and you know this." Sarah looked out the window again. The old man had pulled his jacket tighter, but it wasn't helping. His shoulders were shaking. "He's a veteran, Derek. He served this country. I don't care if he's George Washington. Put the food back or you're done here." Sarah looked at the bowl in her hands, then at Derek, then back at the window. The old man was looking directly at her now, his eyes meeting hers through the glass. They weren't pleading, weren't demanding. They were just tired. She made her choice. Sarah pushed through the door and walked to the bench. "Sir," she said gently, "would you like some hot soup? It's chicken and vegetables." The old man looked up at her with eyes that had seen too much. "I don't have money to pay, miss." "No charge. It's cold, you're wet, and everyone deserves a warm meal." He accepted the bowl with hands that shook slightly. From cold or age, Sarah couldn't tell. "Thank you," he said simply. "What's your name?" "Sarah Chen." "Well, Sarah Chen, this kindness won't be forgotten." She smiled and headed back inside, where Derek was waiting with his arms crossed and his decision already made. "Clean out your locker," he said coldly. "You're fired, effective immediately." The restaurant went quiet. The few remaining customers looked up from their meals. The other staff stopped what they were doing. "Derek, please. I've worked here for 3 years without a single problem." "And you just created one. Company policy is clear. No exceptions." Sarah felt tears building behind her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. "I'm not sorry," she said quietly. "I'd do it again." Derek didn't respond. He just watched as Sarah gathered her things and walked out into the rain, past the old man who was quietly eating his soup, and into the night. What happened next would be talked about in Millfield for years to come. The old man finished his soup and stood up slowly. He walked to the restaurant window and pressed something against the glass, a small rectangular object that caught the light. Then he pulled out a phone that looked too modern for someone in his condition and made a call. "Danny, it's Gunny. I need you to spread the word, all of them, every Marine we served with, every one we trained. Meet me at Romano's on Oak Street, 1 hour." He made 8 more calls, same message, same urgency. Derek, still feeling righteous about his decision, didn't notice the first few vehicles arriving. A pickup truck here, a sedan there. But by 8 p.m., the parking lot was filling up fast. By 8:30, there were 50 vehicles outside Romano's, trucks, cars, motorcycles, and 3 military transport vehicles that had driven down from Camp Lejeune. Derek finally looked outside and froze. 50 men and women in military dress uniforms were forming up in the parking lot. Some were young, active-duty Marines. Others were older, wearing uniforms that still fit after decades of civilian life. A few were in wheelchairs. One was missing an arm, but they all stood with the same bearing, the same dignity, the same purpose. At the front of the formation stood the old man from the bench. Only now Derek could see what he'd pressed against the window. A Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States. The bell above the restaurant door chimed as he entered, followed by 2 Marines in dress blues. The remaining customers and staff stared in stunned silence. "My name is Master Sergeant James Riley, United States Marine Corps, retired," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had led men in combat. 38 years of service, 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 in Iraq. Medal of Honor recipient for actions in Khe Sanh, 1968. Derek's face had gone completely white. "An hour ago, a young woman named Sarah Chen gave me food when I was cold and hungry. She showed kindness to a stranger, respect to a veteran, and compassion to another human being. You fired her for it." Master Sergeant Riley stepped closer. "These Marines behind me? They've driven here from across 3 states because word got out that someone had disrespected not just a veteran, but the woman who showed that veteran dignity. We don't tolerate that." One of the Marines stepped forward, a young staff sergeant with the bearing of someone who had seen combat recently. "Sir, with respect, Sarah Chen embodies everything we fight to protect. Kindness, courage, standing up for what's right, even when it costs something." Another Marine, older, with silver hair and ribbons that told stories of multiple deployments, added, "That woman saw a hungry veteran and fed him. In our book, that makes her family." Derek tried to speak, but Master Sergeant Riley held up a hand. "We're not here to cause trouble. We're here to make something right. Sarah Chen lost her job for showing kindness to a Medal of Honor recipient. That's not acceptable." The restaurant had gone completely silent, except for the sound of rain against the windows and the quiet breathing of 50 Marines who had come to honor one act of kindness. Derek's voice came out as barely a whisper. I didn't know who you were." Master Sergeant Riley's expression didn't change. "You didn't need to know who I was. I was an old man in the rain, and she fed me because it was the right thing to do. Your employee showed more honor in 5 minutes than you've shown in your entire career." The staff sergeant spoke again. "Sir, we understand you're the manager here. We'd like to request that Sarah Chen be reinstated immediately, with an apology and back pay for the hours she's lost." Derek nodded frantically. "Yes, absolutely. I'll call her right now. No need, Master Sergeant Riley said. She's outside. Through the window, they could see Sarah standing in the parking lot, surrounded by Marines who were shaking her hand and thanking her. She looked overwhelmed, but not afraid, moved by the support of people she'd never met, but who treated her like family. Derek rushed outside, his earlier authority completely evaporated. Sarah, please come back. I made a terrible mistake. Your job is waiting for you, with a raise, and I want to publicly apologize for... Sarah held up her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Derek, I appreciate the apology, but I don't think I can work for someone who would fire an employee for feeding a hungry person. Master Sergeant Riley stepped beside her. Sarah, if I may make a suggestion. He turned to address the crowd that had gathered. Not just Marines, but townspeople who had heard about what was happening and come to see for themselves. This young woman represents the best of what we fight for. She saw someone in need and acted with kindness and courage. I think Millfield needs more people like Sarah Chen in positions where they can make a difference. A voice called out from the crowd. The Veterans Center downtown is hiring a coordinator. Another voice. The food bank needs a manager. The community college has an opening in student services. Within minutes, Sarah had 3 job offers, all from organizations that had heard about her act of kindness and wanted someone with her character on their team. But the story wasn't over yet. The next morning, Romano's opened to find a line of customers stretching around the block. Not because people were hungry for the food, but because they wanted to see the place where Sarah Chen had been fired for kindness and where 50 Marines had shown up to make it right. Derek tried to serve the crowd, but customer after customer asked the same question. Is Sarah working today? When he explained that she had taken a position at the Veterans Center, many simply left. By noon, Romano's was nearly empty. Meanwhile, across town at the Millfield Veterans Service Center, Sarah was settling into her new role as Community Outreach Coordinator. The job paid better than Romano's, had full benefits, and allowed her to continue her nursing studies with flexible hours. But more importantly, it put her in a position to help veterans every day. The same instinct that had led her to feed a hungry old man in the rain now guided her in connecting veterans with housing, health care, employment, and the support they needed to transition back to civilian life. Master Sergeant Riley became a regular visitor to the center, not as someone seeking services, but as a volunteer who shared his story with younger veterans and reminded them that their service mattered, their sacrifices were remembered, and their community stood behind them. 3 months later, Sarah received a letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. She had been selected to receive the Citizen Service Award for her work with veterans in Millfield. The ceremony would be held in Washington, D.C., and she was invited to bring a guest. She brought Master Sergeant Riley. Sarah smiled. You taught me something too, Master Sergeant, that kindness isn't just about helping someone in the moment. It's about creating ripples that spread far beyond what we can see. The ceremony was beautiful, but the real reward came afterward. Walking through D.C., they passed a homeless veteran sitting on a bench. Without hesitation, Sarah stopped, bought him lunch, and sat with him while he ate. Master Sergeant Riley watched from a distance, proud not just of the award Sarah had received, but of the person she continued to be. Because that's what real heroes do. They don't perform acts of kindness for recognition or reward. They do it because they see another human being in need, and they can't help but respond. Some stories end with justice served or lessons learned. This story ends with something better. A reminder that in a world that often seems dark and divided, there are still people like Sarah Chen who choose kindness over convenience, compassion over compliance. And when those people are threatened or punished for their goodness, there are others, like 50 Marines who dropped everything to drive across 3 states, who will stand up and say, this matters, this person matters, this kindness matters. The old saying goes, no good deed goes unpunished. But sometimes, just sometimes, good deeds are protected by people who understand their true value. So now I ask you, Have you ever witnessed someone being punished for doing the right thing? Have you ever had to choose between following rules and following your conscience? Share your story in the comments below. Because here at the Human Stories, we believe that acts of kindness should be celebrated, not punished, that people who stand up for others deserve to be stood up for in return, and that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with weapons, but with the simple decision to treat every person with dignity and respect. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who believes in the power of simple kindness. Help us keep these stories alive, because in a world that needs more heroes, sometimes all it takes is a bowl of soup and the courage to give it to someone who needs it. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, remember, you never know when your small act of kindness might change someone's life forever.